be individuals, but it's just an illusion, because everything's connected at every moment, everywhere. And what I would like to see, well, first of all, I think the missing element in human evolution is consciousness. Call it eco-consciousness. Some people would call it feminist consciousness, but it's a consciousness that kind of recognizes in the viscera, more than in the cognitive, which is fooled all the time, that everything's connected. And when you feel the connection, such as I felt in that village, it was not an idea in my head. It was a feeling in my body that was electric. It was like we're one. And so I would say this, that in terms of an instructive frame of reference for understanding where we might be, I think the Neolithic village model, or the indigenous village model, which is basically small food-sufficient cultures, provides us at least a suggestion about where we would be once Western civilization or industrial civilization collapses, which it's probably already in the process of collapsing, and it needs to collapse. It deserves to collapse. And quite frankly, we're so addicted to a way of life in the Western world. We're so addicted to materialism and convenience and comfort, even if we feel repulsed by our national policies. It's our individual and collective obedience to industrial civilization's requirements that keeps the civilization going. And therefore, I put the onus on all of us to say we can choose to depart from our path of obedience, our path of compliance and complicity, and I'm still working on it. And I, by the way, became a tax refuser in 1983. And that was one of the first things I did when I realized that my taxes were going to kill people. I mean, it was conscious, like, wow, paying taxes to an entity that kills people, that's pretty bizarre that I would do that. And so I actually haven't paid taxes since 1983, but I had to become self-employed. I couldn't own any property, and I couldn't have a bank account. But I think each of us has to decide how we are going to walk on the planet knowing that what we're part of is totally insane. I mean, we are part of Western industrial civilization that is insane. It's designed now to kill us all, or kill most of us. And so that makes no sense to me. The question is, what kind of an epistemological shift happens and how fast when some tipping point or something occurs to us in a visceral way that enables us to just say something, do something today that we thought was impossible yesterday. I make no predictions. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure extinction is one of our very likely options, or near so. And I think on the other hand, we also are capable of incredible consciousness shifts when our survival requires it. And our survival is begging us to have a shift, not just in the way we think, but the way we feel about one another. Feelings are really different than thoughts.
Yeah, who calls the shots? The question is for us to go to war and do these violent acts, and it's obvious who carries out the orders. We hear about that, but who actually, what is behind? Where is the power structure, the pyramid coming from? What can we people who seem knowledgeable, the massive majority of us who are ignorant and don't know, what can we do, the average citizen?
So everybody hear the question? Yeah. Well, you know, we have to understand that for 500 years, we've had Eurocentric globalization that represented about 20% of the world's population, plundering the other 80%. So those of us who grew up in the Western world are quote-unquote beneficiaries of this plunder, the materialism, the convenience, the comfort. And of course, we have not had anybody teaching us the consequences of this, really. If you're taught the consequences, you become a revolutionary, basically. And so we are all, most of us are addicted to this way of life that requires imperial policies. You do not have We have 4.6% of the population of the world, and we consume a quarter to a third of the world's resources. All of our consumption, our collective consumption, drives the imperial policies. Yes, we have a cabal, a military, industrial, congressional cabal that benefits materially and politically. At least they get elected because they're financed by this whole cabal, which is not helping humanity or us, but we're kind of addicted to maintaining a way of life that requires a very significant amount of obedience. So our consumption, basically our insatiable Western consumption, drives imperial policies. We have to steal, we have to plunder to maintain our way of life. This is the hard one for the Western world to grasp, because we don't want to give up our comfort and our convenience. But do we want to give up our future? Do we want to give up our species' life? Maybe we do. Maybe we're so dumbed down we're just going to be like the frog in the boiling water who boils to death at 212 because the propagandization process is just gradual, and you just becoming more entrenched in maintaining the system. I don't know how it happens. I just know that we have the capacity as human beings to make radical shifts from what we're doing if we want to survive. And we all know about adrenaline. And when your adrenaline is provoked, you move, your body moves, because the blood goes to the muscles. It leaves the brain. Your autonomic nervous system goes to the muscles, and you move to avoid danger. Now, will we have a collective adrenaline that recognizes that our way of life, the way we're participating every day, is killing us? I don't know. It doesn't appear that way. It doesn't appear to be something that might happen, but I don't think we can rule it out, because our survival depends upon that shift. But we have to look at our individual and collective actions and actually we really need to get in the streets. And I don't know what will tip that, but I've said this at other events. In Tunisia, the tipping point in Tunisia was the one PhD who represented lots of educated people in Tunisia who couldn't get work, and he got a vendor cart to sell food. And he didn't have the proper permit, and the police beat him up, destroyed his food vendor cart, and then he was so despondent he immolated himself to death. That triggered hundreds of thousands of people going to the streets and not leaving, because they could all relate to that man. Their plight was very similar. We're still living as if we're kind of separate from the rest of the world, and life is still okay, but we're not separate from the rest of the world, because we're all wired socially. And what happens here, what happens there, happens here. King said it. And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're all connected. That's the evolutionary shift waiting to occur. If we get it, we will make radical changes. If we don't get it, we'll die on our knees begging for mercy at some point, probably. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that we're on a journey, and everybody has choices along the way.
Brian, could you talk about that shift and connect it to the shirt you have on and what you're trying to do and the shifts you've made in your lifestyle and your consumption?
Yeah, this is my cycling shirt. It's a picture of Gandhi sitting next to a bicycle wheel instead of a spinning wheel. And out of the hub of the wheel, which in this case is the chrysalis, you have a butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. As you know, in the chrysalis, there's this war that goes on between the caterpillar, who webs this cocoon, or webs this little thing called the chrysalis, and actually is part of an incredible metamorphosis that it fights before it emerges into a butterfly. A caterpillar devours, and a butterfly treads very lightly and pollinates. And so this logo, which Becky, my wife, and I designed, represents the metamorphosis from driving cars to riding bicycles.